Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my Chess Realm YouTube channel. As you probably know, World Championship Candidates Tournament in Yekaterinburg in Russia recently ended, but those top players who were not competing there played on something called New in Chess Classic, which was an online knockout tournament, part of a championship chess tour. Anyway, in the finals, Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen met. The match consisted of 2 days of playing for rapid games. On the second day, in the second game, Hikaru Nakamura, he had white pieces and he started with d4, d5, c4, e6, and we have queen's gambit decline. White continues with knight to c3, a6. The move a6 is not very common line, but Carlsen pulled this move many times in past, trying to get his opponents out of the standard variation. So white captures on d5, e-pawn recaptures, bishop to f4, knight to f6, e3, bishop to d6, bishop captures on d6. Black doesn't want to get double pawns along the d-file, so queen recaptures, bishop to d3 and bishop to g4, attacking the queen. One option is, of course, knight from g to e2, defending. White, however, played queen to b3, targeting unprotected pawn on b7, but black doesn't care. Knight to c6 was played. Well, here, if white captures the pawn on b7, then black simply castles, threatening with rook from f to b8, trapping queen. So here white would have to remove the queen to b3. After rook from f to b8, then queen cannot go to c2 because of knight to b4, queen to d2, knight to d3, queen recaptures, and rook to b2. Material is equal, but white's position is very bad. So here white would have to play queen to a3, maybe after knight to b4, bishop to b1 for a sacrificed pawn. Black leads in development and has enough compensation. Okay, so in the game, white played h3, bishop to h5, knight from g to e2, bishop captures on e2, knight recaptures, and now black castles kingside. White, instead of castling, plays rook to c1, targeting the knight on c6, also threatening with queen to b7, double attacking knight on c6. So black defends the b7 pawn with knight to d8, queen to a3, offering exchange of queens, but black doesn't feel like it. Queen to d7, white castles kingside. Now g6, protecting f5 square, limiting the movement of white light square bishop, of course at the cost of weakening f6 square. Knight goes to f4, rook to e8, bishop to c2, clearing d3 square for the knight. Black plays c6, knight to d3. As you can see, all black pawns are on the light squares, which is a very effective method against the mobility of white light square bishop. So white has plan of deploying his knight to either c5 or e5 when the time comes. In the game, black played knight to e6 and now f4, further putting pressure on e5 square, but more important, threatening with f5 pawn push. Allowing f5 would be a mistake. For example, if rook goes to b8, f5, white is attacking 2 pieces. Now if black captures on f5, then rook to f5, and soon a knight would join in the game and black position would be very bad. If black removes the knight, then white captures on g6. We discover attack on the knight, and this would be even worse. So in the game, black supports the f5 square, knight to g7 was played, still white plays f5. You might think that pawn on f5 is for free, but if black captures, then knight to e5 attacking the queen after maybe queen to e6. Now pawn on f5 is double attacked and double defended, so black would be tied to the defense of his f5 pawn. If, however, black captures with knight, then knight to c5 attacking the queen, queen to c8, bishop captures on c5, black recaptures again, pawn position around the black king is destroyed, and there are many ways for white to regain the pawn, so this position is to rather equal. In the game, however, black played g5, keeping the f and g files fully closed. White plays knight to e5, queen to c7, now h4, not the best move. White was counting on g captures on h4, then after rook to f4, black regains the pawn very quickly and also opens additional files. So black played g4, keeping the files closed, queen to c3, knight from g goes to h5. Now black is the one with initiative, planning to take over g3 square and later with h5 45 g4 pawn. So white plays queen to e1, temporarily preventing g3 knight jump, but here black sensed his opportunity and knight on e5 was really bothering him, so black sacrificed the exchange. Rook captures knight on e5, the pawn recaptures, queen recaptures, and now white plays queen to c3, trying to exchange queens, removing the most dangerous piece. Black plays queen to g3, threatening to capture on g4, and then all black needs to do is g-pawn push and white is more or less lost. So white plays queen to e1, defending pawn on h4. Black plays queen to d6, queen to f2, connecting the rooks. Rook to e8, rook from c goes to d1, queen to e5, eyeing on the pawn on b2, and white plays rook to d4, closing the diagonal, c5 driving the rook away, rook goes back to d2, preparing to double the rooks along the d file. You might think that pawn on b2 is for free, but if black captures, then bishop to a4. Now queen is under attack, so is rook on e8. But if you think black is lost, think again. Black can play queen to b4. If white captures, then we have g3 attacking the queen. Queen is tied to the defense of the rook on d2, so queen would have to go to e1. Now queen h4, threatening with mate on h2. So here white would have to remove the rook, and for example, if he doesn't want to get his rook taken by knight, he would have to play rook to f3, then queen h2, king f1, queen h1, king e2, queen to g2, and now white loses rook. So even after maybe rook f2, pawn captures, queen recaptures, queen captures, king captures, knight to e4, forking king and rook, and now both sides have one piece, but black has additional 3 pawns. Well, it was a rapid game. Black probably didn't have time to calculate all this. Knight to g3 was played, rook from f to d1. You might think that black with knight to e4 can fork queen and rook, but then bishop captures on e4, knight recaptures, And now pawn on d5 is not protected, so after rook to d5, knight captures queen, rook captures queen, rook recaptures, and king recaptures after probably rook to f5. Yeah, black gets one pawn advantage, but this is probably not enough for easy victory. So in the game, black plays king to f8. So this is a sort of a waiting move. Black waits for white's next move, and white plays rook to d3, and this was a mistake. And here in this position, black should have played knight from g to e4. Both knights would be connected. Also, d5 pawn is also protected, and then with the g3 pawn push coming in the way, this is simply a winning position. Black, however, fails to find the correct plan, or I should say the fastest road to victory. In the game, black played knight from f goes to e4. Now queen is under attack, but d5 pawn is not protected. Here white could try with rook captures on d5, even if queen captures on b2, then bishop captures on d4. After queen captures queen, king recaptures, then knight captures on e4, then maybe queen to f1, and after knight to c3. Both rooks are forked and they have to be connected. So after that, black probably gains either e3 or f5 pawn. So with 2 pawns advantage, this should probably be enough for victory, but still it would require some precision from white though. In the game, however, white played a move that loses instantly. Queen goes to e1, and now black has a simple task. As you can see, white king is kind of trapped. Both knights are preventing his escape, so the black's plan is somehow grab the h4 pawn and then create a mating net. So black plays queen to f6, rook captures on d5, queen captures on h4, bishop captures on e4, queen to h1, king to f2. Now knight recaptures on e4, king to e2 is the only move, queen to g2, king to d3, and now there are many ways for black to finish the game. For example, he could have played knight to f2, check, then maybe king to c3, knight captures rook, rook recaptures, now queen to f3, trying to get the e3 pawn. Even if white protects it, then maybe queen to f5. Now already black has already 3 pawns advantage, so this is simply a winning position for black. And therefore, realizing his hopeless position here, Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game. I hope you like this game and that you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.